loving seeing that we have so many graphic authors, graphic novelists here at the GBF festivals, because to me it seems as though it's showing us that graphic novelists are truly coming into their own for getting the credit that they deserve for the talent that they have. And they're finally being invited to the literary party. And I think, thankfully, we're coming to the end of the debate about whether comics and graphic novels are a true literary genre. It seems like teachers, as we were talking with Gareth before, that teachers are no longer horrified at the thought of having graphic novels in their classrooms and are beginning to include them in the curriculum. So that's good. But somehow it does still seem as though graphic novels are considered the also-rans of literature, something like a consolation prize. So sometimes it seems like mom and dad are saying, well, if it's the only way to get them to read, I guess it's better than nothing. But for folks who might be thinking that, I'd like to introduce them to George O'Connor, who is struggling with his presentation here with the technology. But here's a guy who knows how to tell a story, and the fact that he tells it in words and artwork simply allows him to tell a multi-dimensional, fully layered, fully realized story in a small amount of real estate. And for me, as a historical fiction writer, the thing that is fascinating to me is the amount of research that George puts into his writing. So one of his stories, which is absolutely wonderful, Journey into Mohawk Country, he has taken the actual journal of a young Dutch adventurer who hikes into upstate New York to find a steady supply of beaver pelts, which is a big commodity in the New World. The journal is from the winter of 1634. So imagine the amount of research that George needed to do into the political climate, the physical climate, the time period, and the cultures and the clash of cultures that he brings so richly to life in this book. It's absolutely wonderful. And then let's consider the Olympian Series, which I know we're going to be considering today. And George is going to be talking to us about it. The series comes out of George's long-standing love of Greek mythology, as well as his love of comics. But in bringing this series to life, he has added his voice to a long tradition that comes out of thousands of years of storytelling. So consider that. So he's adding his voice to a long, long line of storytellers who are some of our absolute best, like Homer. And each of those guys has added his own flavor to the story that he told. And George is no different. As he was working on these stories, he has gone to some of the ancient historical sites that he's describing in these books. The thing that appeals to me so much is that he goes as close to the source material as he possibly can to read the earliest translations that he can find of the people who wrote these stories down. So he's not reading somebody else's interpretation, he's attempting to read the closest thing, and these are some of the oldest texts that we have extant on Earth. So to me, that is a fascinating journey that brings him through to telling these stories. As I said, they are nuanced, they are fully realized, these people live and breathe. And in it, he has woven through his sense of the story that he wanted to tell. So he has pulled all of that information together to tell his own story and put his own voice on it, and it is absolutely wonderful. I'm holding today my absolute favorite because Athena was always my favorite goddess. Lots of girl power going on here. And today, George is going to be talking to us about the 7th in the series that he's bringing forth, and that is about Athena's cohort in war. We're talking about Ares, bringer of war. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome George O'Connor.
Hi, everybody. Before we begin, I want us to all give a standing ovation to Jenny for that was the most masterful. We were having some technical difficulties. There's a thing you should know, a curse was placed to me a while ago that no matter how often I arrive for something, Like say like if I'm an hour early, we will need an hour and 5 minutes to set up tech. It doesn't matter. There's some sort of weird thing going on. That was astounding. So it looks like we have things working, hopefully. So hi, I'm George. I do this series called Olympians. This is a picture I drew of my head exploding. This is normally the point in time I'd ask why we think I would draw such a picture. Does anybody in the audience care to venture a guess? Yeah. If you couldn't hear that, it was this is indicative of my imagination. I always like to call that that's like the optimistic response. There's a couple reasons for this. Yeah, this is definitely like showing my imagination. It's this drawing of me, and I have like gods, like including Athena jumping out of my skull. But it's also a mythological reference. Anybody out there who is familiar with the origins of the gods will know that Athena was born fully formed from the head of Zeus. So that could mean that I'm a huge egomaniac, but I did go through great efforts to show that Zeus himself is also jumping out of my head. So it is, yeah, it's my imagination giving birth to these stories. There's also a pessimistic answer for this. Like many people, I've always liked to write, I've always liked to draw. I do both, I'm lucky. But I have to say, of the two of them, I have a much harder time writing than drawing. And this was drawn one morning in my studio in Gowanus, where I was supposed to be writing, and I just couldn't get the words out of my skull. It was just so hard. And so finally I just quit and drew my head exploding, because wouldn't it be great if I could just have the stories leap fully formed from my head, like the Pallas Athena from Zeus? But then I'd have to go to the hospital, and I would probably die. Oh, and the arrow, let's see if the arrow works. Yes! All right, guys, we cleared the last technological hurdle. All right, all is well in the universe. So this is it's maybe a little hard for you to see, but this is a drawing, actually a photo manipulation of myself in 3rd grade. I already mentioned I like to write, I like to draw. When I was the kid, I was always the kid who sat in the back of the class writing and drawing. And up until 3rd grade, I would do that mainly while we were learning math and stuff. I'd be drawing like, my 3 favorite things in the world to draw were monsters, muscle men, and pretty ladies. And so I'd probably be drawing, like we're learning fractions, I'm probably drawing like a pretty lady eating a cyclops or something. And my teacher would be like, that's very nice, George, we're learning fractions, please put that away. 3rd grade, in April, teacher comes in, she's like, guess what, class? We're spending the rest of the year studying Greek mythology. We're gonna be studying muscle men fighting monsters. And like little 3rd grade George is like, Eureka! It was like life-changing moment. I had to dress up as my favorite god and deliver an oral report. There were not cameras invented then, so I created this picture to show it. There's live inaccuracies. I'm Hermes, in case you can't tell. For instance, in 3rd grade, I did not have a beard. That was a few years later, like in 4th grade. My winged helmet was actually a winged baseball cap. My caduceus, his wand, was made of green paper snakes and a coat hanger. I actually had this cool toy Pegasus that the wings popped out the side, and I had a golden shoelace, and I was going to tie the wings onto my leg with the golden shoelace and make cool golden sandals, but I forgot the wings that day. So instead I cut them out of loose leaf paper and taped them to my shoes and just kind of wore that. It was pretty sad. And the one bit that's not reflected here at all is that I wore a towel. So in front of, like, imagine this, in front of, like, it wasn't just my class. I seem to remember this being the entire school on top of a small stage, much like this, standing in front of everybody I knew, being like, Hermes was the greatest of the Greek gods, because hoping my towel doesn't fall off. It didn't, but it should have been a humiliating experience for any other person. For me, it was life-changing in the most amazing way. I went and read every single book on Greek mythology I could find at the library that was age-appropriate, like literally exhausted, to the point where my librarian, Mrs. Ching, was like, start reading these books, and she got me into, like, Norse mythology, and then Egyptian mythology, and then African mythology, and Native American mythology, and this goes on for years until you get up to King Arthur, and I stopped because I thought King Arthur was boring. But I'm like getting way ahead of myself here, because at this point, I'm a grown-up, and I mean, Greek mythology is my favorite thing ever in the world, still to this day. So I do this whole series of books about Greek mythology. This is a family portrait of the gods. I could spend a lot of time just pointing out all the little details here. This is a piece I'm really happy with. There's a lot of weird little meanings and things in here, but I'm not going to do that to you guys. But this is just the family. This is like kind of the core family of who we like spend time going through in the Olympians. These would be the main cast of characters, with of course the main dude being Zeus. He's kind of like he's the glue that holds the family together or sends it almost screaming apart. So the idea behind my graphic novel series, Olympians, is that there's going to be 12 books in the series, and each book focuses on one of the Greek gods. Some of the books tell one complete story of them. Some of the books tell a whole smattering of stories. Some of them tell stories about things within what they're in charge of, like maybe a water story for Poseidon or something. 12-book series start with Zeus. This was what I wanted the first cover to be. I said to my publisher, this is the first cover. They said, no, it's not. This is hard to see. This is pencils. Who here has ever had the experience where you look in a book and be like, I could never draw something that good in a million years, no way, no how? I mean, I know it happens to me all the time. I include this slide, even though it is hard to see, just to point out a couple things. When I'm working on these books, I draw really fast. And I draw really fast because I know I'm going to make a lot of mistakes. This was the pencil cover for Zeus. This was the fourth one I drew that day. And keep redrawing it, just hoping to get it right. There's a lot of mistakes here. Kronos the Titan's hand is like a blob. His sickle is even more of a blob. If you take a look closely at Zeus, there's all these extra lines and things that just don't even make sense in him. But then I'll take this pencil drawing and I'll ink it and color it and add just the right lines and just trace over the bits because I have this loose tapestry there. And then it looks like something I couldn't draw in 1,000 years, even though I totally did. This is something called a dummy. I'm sure you guys have heard that expression in a not kind way, being used to refer to people who are not too smart. But in publishing, a dummy is the guidebook that people will use to, it's like the blueprint of the book, so to speak. And this is me trying to sell my publisher on the idea of a 12-book series. So I did this really tight dummy. This particular sequence is showing the Greek birth of the universe. Those are the Titans being born. These are the Cyclopes, and these are the Hecatoncheires. And then this is the finished, where it's not all that different, honestly, right? I mean, it's color, the drawing is a bit tighter. Here's another shot. This is Kronos the Titan. That is Zeus's father. He is using his sickle of adamantine to slice open the sky Ouranos, right? And there's the finished one. This is a little disingenuous for me to be showing these dummies, because these are super tight dummies. This is me trying to sell a 12-book deal. Nowadays, I draw my dummies like on toilet paper with a burnt twig. It just like... Can I just interrupt for a second, too? That joke, I tell this joke everywhere, right? Sometimes people laugh, and sometimes people, like the kids especially, will look at me like, why is this grown man talking about toilet paper? Why is he drawing on toilet paper? This shouldn't be happening. So I appreciate you guys laugh. Thank you. You guys are cool by me. All right. So my take on the Greek mythology, I go back to ancient sources, as was mentioned in my excellent introduction. If it wasn't written by an ancient Greek or an ancient Roman, I just don't use it. There's been so many great retellings of Greek mythology, and I hope to be considered among that number, but I don't want to accidentally lift somebody else's idea. Part of being a storyteller is you are going to add your own spin to something, and I wanted to go back to the original sources and give my spin. So when you go back to original sources about Zeus, I think we tend to have this idea of him from a lot of movies where he's this old guy with gray hair and a beard, right? But if you actually read these stories, there's three things you immediately pick up about the king of the gods. One, and this is like true of all the Olympians, he's immortal. He never gets old, he never dies. So, guy never gets old. That's really important to remember. Two, he can look like whatever he wants. He's a shape changer. Sometimes he turns into an ant or like a swan or a cow just to make it more interesting. But he can look like anything he wants. He could look like you or like Brad Pitt or me or whatever. Like he could look like anything he wants. So, guy never gets old, can look like anything he wants. And three, and this is the silly bit, almost every myth about Zeus is him chasing after pretty ladies. And so if you're a guy who your favorite thing in the world to do is to chase around after pretty ladies, and you never get old, and you can look like whatever you want, would you be an old guy with gray hair and a beard, or would you be a 21-year-old surfer dude from California? And that's my Zeus. I call this piece Cowabunga Zeus. All right. I talked a little bit about the dummy, and when I made my dummy, I was a dummy. Turns out there were supposed to be 66 pages of comics in this book, and I did 64. And this got surprisingly far along in the process. This is the first book. It's like maybe 2 weeks out from print, and my editor calls up, and he's like, George, missing a couple pages of Olympians. I think you forgot to upload them. I'm like, yeah, you're right, I probably did. And I just didn't even draw these pages. They didn't exist. So I raced to my studio, and I drew this page and this page, like super duper quick. You know, drew them, colored them, added like the text in for them, said, oh, I forgot to send you the new version of the text too. All this stuff. And I include this for two reasons. One, to make the joke, I was a dummy when I made my dummy. I couldn't count that high. And two, just to kind of show like it's nice to make mistakes sometimes because you get some cool surprises. And to show off, I think these pages came out pretty neat. All right. So then after Zeus, I knew I wanted to go to Athena. Athena is a fascinating character in myth to me. The Greeks maybe didn't exactly have the best sexual relations with the women of their society, but they did choose to make their smartest god and their greatest warrior a woman, which is really interesting to me. And she's such a great character. I always knew, like, yes, gonna have Athena right away as number one, as number two. This is what I wanted the cover to be. My publisher's like, no, it's not. That's the cover. We wanted something that reflected a little bit closer like the trade dress we established with Zeus, where we have Athena right in the middle. We have the gross giant head of Medusa floating behind her. We have the Fates, and we have the Gigantes, who are like these scaly, gross gorilla monsters. We'll talk about them more. This is the actual birth of Athena in the actual comic. I already referenced it in that first self-portrait of myself. But basically, this is an idea we're going to return to a few times. Zeus is the worst husband who ever lived. His first wife was the goddess Metis. And Metis was also smarter than him. It's probably not too hard to be smarter than Zeus in these stories. And she gave him a lot of advice and stuff. And, she was really key in helping him establish his rule. But there was a curse placed on her, essentially, that if they were to have a kid together, that kid would overthrow Zeus as king of the gods. Zeus really digs being king of the gods. It's the best job you can hope for, right? So he's like, I don't want that to happen. And so instead of like breaking up with her or just like not having kids, like he swallows her. He tricks her into turning into a fly and just eats her. Now she's a goddess. She doesn't die. She lives in his head. He forgets about her almost immediately. She was already pregnant. So for like, soon afterwards, she gives birth inside of Zeus's head. So Zeus has like two goddesses living in his head. And like this goes on for like 16 years. Like, while Athena, who is the goddess born there, while she's like this young godling, right? And like for 16 years, Zeus has this crazy pressure headache because he's got two goddesses living in his head. And finally, he's 5,000 years old, so that's like an afternoon for him, but still, he can't take it anymore. So finally, he goes to his son Hephaestus. He's like, Hephaestus, I have this headache, the pressure. You need to take a hammer and split my skull open and release the pressure. And Hephaestus has some serious daddy issues. He's like, yeah, I'll do that. And he takes a spike and a big hammer. Ares and Poseidon hold Zeus into place. Boom, bam, Zeus's head explodes. Out jumps this 16-year-old girl in armor. Oh! And like everyone's like, what happened? Like Zeus, okay, wait, just in case you're worried, Zeus is a god, so his head goes shoom back to normal. But he's like, awesome, I have kids jumping out of my head. And like, look at Hera's face. Hera's like, this guy has kids jumping out of his head. Why is this happening to me? So, growing up in Zeus's head changes Athena though. Instead of wanting to overthrow him, she's like super duper smart. I think she understands her dad. She's like, oh, he's got his problems, but I lived in his head. I understand the way he is. But she is like I said, the smartest god on Olympus, and she's also the greatest warrior. So when those Gigantes, those gross scaly gorilla things I mentioned, when they're going to go attack Olympus because they're jealous of Olympians because Olympians are hot, Athena leads the charge. The leader of the Gigantes is this giant, he's like literally as big as a mountain, so that's pretty big. He's half goat, he's half gorilla, and he has like skin that, like he's been ensorcelled where his skin cannot be pierced as long as he's alive. And she has to kill this dude. So we start in close on her eyes, and we zoom out, and we zoom out, and we zoom out until she's this little tiny speck, and then you would turn the page, and you see she's tiny compared to this guy. And she still kills him in like a page. So I'm going to act this out because I like to act this part out. So, all right, giant goat gorilla monster. You guys hear me, right? Giant goat gorilla monster has huge club, brings it down, boom! Athena runs up there onto his hand like a bug. He's like, ugh! She does a backflip, lands on his head, stabs him right through the eye. Because that's not his skin, right? He's dead. Then, because he's dead, she can cut his skin now. She takes her sword, cuts a big chunk of his skin off, makes a cape out of it. Now cast your brain back to 3rd grade George. So the lady stabs him through the eye and then cuts his skin off and makes a cape, and I could draw this in school? Yes, you'll get an A for it. I'm like, cool. Greek mythology's awesome. All right. This is the cover for book 3, Hera. Hera is my favorite goddess, which a lot of people think is weird because they're like, oh, but Hera's so mean. She's always picking on all of Zeus's girlfriends. I'm like, think about it. So, remember how we mentioned how Zeus could look like whatever he wants? I don't know if you can see it. She's got a little green thing on her finger. It's a little tiny bird. That's Zeus. So Zeus spent hundreds of years trying to get Hera to marry him. And he tries all the typical Zeus ways. Like, he's like, check out my six-pack. She's like, no, no. He's like, look at me bench press this mountain. She's like, you're a total creep who ate his first wife. I'm not going to marry you. So he goes for the pity play, which is actually a good thing for people to try. He makes it rain for like days on Mount Olympus. Everyone's cooped up inside. Everyone knows Zeus is in a bad mood, and then they're in a bad mood because they can't go outside, even gods and goddesses, right? And then Zeus transforms himself into this little tiny cuckoo bird. And like he gets all wet and bedraggled looking, and he goes on Hera's windowsill, and he's like, chirp, chirp, chirp. And like so sad. And she's like, she hears this, and she's like, oh, this poor little bird. That creeps Zeus. She picks up the little bird. She takes him, puts him down in her room. And then it's like, Kazam! Hey, it's me, Zeus. Marry me, baby. And this time, after a few hundred years, her resolve has wavered. She agrees to marry him. It's a little hard to see, so I'm going to act this out for you. This is how she does it. She grabs his beard. She pulls him down. Oh, I'll marry you. But if you screw up, you're going to pay. So Zeus has a lot of faults, right? But he's definitely like brave. He's clearly the bravest of the Olympians. But this is literally the only thing in the cosmos he is afraid of is his own wife. Now, does he not screw up after this? No, he keeps screwing up because he's Zeus. He's not very smart. But, they have this whole relationship where they kind of love each other, but they love to fight even more. So, here's their wedding. It's all very pretty and pink, and they're looking at each other, and he's like, you look beautiful, and she's like, I kill you, pig, and like they kiss, and normally when there's little kids in the audience, like little boys especially, get really squirmy at this point, which I really love, and I like to bring that out a little bit longer, and then I followed up with something totally gross, because the boys need something, right? So, top middle there is Heracles. You guys probably know him as Hercules, but that's his Roman name. The Greeks called him Heracles, and it's really important to make that distinction because the name Heracles means the glory of Hera, which is weird because Hera is often depicted as being his greatest enemy. But the tact I took, going back, looking at some of these older sources, is not so much that she's just being mean to him for the sake of being mean. All right, his mom is not Hera. His mom is a mortal princess named Alcmene. So, like, Zeus has this kid outside of their relationship. He's like, hey, can this guy come live in Olympus? She's like, what? No! And then she finally, like, you know what? He could prove his worthiness. So she makes his name is Alcides, by the way, when he was born. She makes young Alcides go out and kill these different monsters that are plaguing mankind. This is the labors of Heracles. And people get psyched. It's like, yay, that bulletproof lion that's eating all the kids just got killed. The glory of Hera. And that's how he gets the name Heracles. So this part takes place just after Heracles, as we'll call him from now on, has just killed his first monster, the Nemean lion, who is a monster that skin cannot be pierced by anything except for his own claws. So he chokes it and skins it. Again, third grade George. So I could draw a guy skinning a lion after he chokes it to death? Yes, cool. All right. I was a creepy kid, right? So, do we have any 10-year-olds in the audience? All right, we got a 10-year-old. All right. Now imagine this, if you will, Mr. 10-year-old. Your uncle shows up, and he's like to your parents, hey, I need to go into the swamps of Lerna and kill a giant poisonous snake. Can I borrow your 10-year-old kid? Like bad uncle, right? And bad parents. But that's what happens to Aeolus. Aeolus is the nephew of Heracles, and Heracles brings his 10-year-old into the swamps to kill a poisonous snake, which in itself is a bad idea. But then when the poisonous snake turns out to be more of a giant poisonous dragon, it gets really bad. But luckily, Aeolus is there. He's about to be eaten. He's like, oh, my gods. But Heracles rushes him with his club and just like literally blows his head apart. The monster, not Aeolus. That would be a very different story. So the dragon's head, blam! There's all brains and stuff there. And up on Mount Olympus, Zeus and Hera are watching. Zeus is like, oh, that was pretty easy. And Hera's like, wait for it. Because, of course, you guys know what this is, right? So, like, the stump picks itself up. There's this disgusting wet ripping noise. And it's a two-headed poison. Oh, it's the Hydra. Knock one head off, two more go in its place. So it comes rushing at Heracles, who's like, batter up, and he gets ready. This is what I love about Heracles, right? He is the greatest hero of ancient Greece. Like, he's clearly their greatest hero character. He's also clearly the dumbest. So it's just like smash, 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 grow, 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 smash, smash, grow, 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 smash, smash, grow, grow, grow. And you turn the page, and like there's like a multi-headed Hydra there. And he still keeps smashing heads. So thankfully he brought along the 10-year-old Aeolus. Aeolus is like, Uncle, hold on a second. Maybe instead of smashing heads, we can try burning it. And he burns the stump, and the Hydra screams, but no new heads grow. And Heracles is like, cool, it's clobbering time. And, smash, 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 burn, burn, burn. That's how they kill it. This is my favorite detail. Like, Hera's mad. She's like, he cheated. He didn't do that. The 10-year-old saved the day. So he ends up having to redo that labor and one other. This was my original cover for book 4, Hades. I was like, we're going to do it. It's called Hades, the Wealthy One. And my publisher's like, no, this is the cover. And we're calling it Hades, Lord of the Dead. It's probably a better title. There's Hades himself, his 3-headed dog Cerberus, his future wife Persephone, and his future mother-in-law Demeter. This is a drawing of Hades wearing his helmet of invisibility. So he has this helmet that when he puts it on, he's invisible to like everything, even other gods, which is important for the story because a lot of people think of Hades as being evil. They think of him like being like the devil. But when you read the original myth, he's actually not evil so much as he's just depressed. He hangs around underground with dead people all day, so like you'd be depressed too. And he's lonely. Dead people aren't good company. So he just sits up and looks at the surface world a lot. And he sees this young girl named Cora. And Cora's name means young girl, so not a great name. But Cora will one day be Persephone, which means bringer of destruction. Also not a great name. But anyway, so we're jumping ahead. So he sees Cora and he falls in love with her from afar. And he goes to Cora's dad, who's Zeus, and Cora's mom is Demeter. And he's like, hey, Zeus, I'm in love with Cora. I think I'd like to marry her. And Zeus is actually psyched. He's like, dude, great idea. They do like their secret bro handshake and they seal the deal. But nobody tells Cora and nobody tells Demeter. So like bad news, right? So poor Cora is just like picking flowers one day, la da da, and much like today, out of nowhere, a storm blows up really suddenly. Literally blows her friends away. And then like these 4 black horses and a mysterious stranger appear out of nowhere as if they've been invisible, which of course they had been, because it's Hades. And he reaches down and grabs her and she screams for her mother, Mother! And they go thundering across this field. And he throws this mighty thing here. What is this called, guys? Do it, man, do it! A bident, yes. How cool is that? This is something I never knew, right? A trident. Everyone knows what a trident looks like, right? 3. So when there's 2 points, it's a bident. And the dent means tooth, like a dentist. How cool is that? I think that's cool. Nobody else ever thinks that cool. They always look at me like... So anyway, he throws this bident. Boom! He makes this huge hole in the ground. They go thundering towards it. Cora's screaming, crazy man, drive me towards a hole in the ground. And without even slowing down, 4 horses, 2 gods, right over the cliff. Whoosh! They fall. They fall for 24 hours straight. The entire time Cora's screaming, the entire time Hades isn't talking to her because he didn't know how to talk to girls yet. And finally, after a full 24 hours of falling, boom, they land. And like Cora's like, what happened? And he's throwing his stuff on the floor because he's a pig. But, okay, so maybe he's not evil God, but he needs to learn a lot about how to treat other people. That's kind of what that story's about. All right. This is the really embarrassing one for all parties involved. So Poseidon. Everybody loves Poseidon. Poseidon has a trident, right? So...
I'm sorry to interrupt. We just wanted to let you know that we have word the storm is about 10 to 15 minutes out.
Uh-oh.
So we ask, let's everybody move into the center of the tent. Might be a good idea, and just stay put seems to be the best advice. That's the advice that we're asked to give.
How electrocuted am I going to get up here? I probably shouldn't have said Zeus was dumb like 20 times, right?
That did it, I'm sure.
Yeah, that was a bad move.
So they're asking that everybody take cover in a tent or building. I feel like we're here already. If people move in, it would probably be a better bet than sitting on the edges. If you want to try to go and get into a building, you can, but this might be the best bet.
You guys will never make it in time. You're stuck here with me. All right, are we ready for this? I'm going to make this silly. Everybody's in their new spots where they're not going to get soaked or whisked away by Zeus. All right, okay. Poseidon. All right, everybody loves Poseidon. He's a pretty famous god. Here's the thing about Poseidon. He's in like almost every myth, but he's like never the main character. And he's a really hard character to get a handle on. The way I like to describe him is like this. Who's ever done this thing where they go to the beach, and you go into the water about up to here, and you look out to sea, and then a wave comes and very gently rolls over you, jump up, and you float down. So this is like a universal experience, right? This isn't me. You jump up, and you float down. And you turn to your friend like, oh, isn't this nice? And your friend's like, yeah, and then boom, a wave knocks you over. Like, that's Poseidon. Poseidon goes from 0 to crazy in like 2 seconds. So he was kind of hard to write a book about. Eventually I settled on the idea, like, I'm going to write this book from Poseidon's point of view. When you read this book, Poseidon Earthshaker, he's the actual narrator. So I'm going to, for this next bit, I'm actually going to act like Poseidon myself. So if you guys can kind of like just picture me being about 9 foot tall and like green with like seaweed hair and huge muscles and wearing a diaper. Can you do that? Or that's like horribly disturbing, so we just look at the picture, right? Okay, let me get into character here. Remember, 0 to crazy in like 2 seconds. All right. I am Poseidon, Lord of the Deep, and I sink down through the cool liquid blue past all these fish that George totally copied out of Finding Nemo. And I'm laughing at my own joke now. And here I'm at the bottom of the ocean, and all is cool and calm. Oh, and look here in my hand. This is my trident. It means 3 teeth. My uncles, the Cyclopes, gave it to me.
I'm gonna tell him he just needs to go to
And
the
with
bathroom.
it I create whirlpools! And my voice thunders from the deep, and the waves slide from my dark hair. And he's like, bah! Brings up his trident, brings it down, boom! Shatters the ocean floor. Huge tectonic plates shifting. Up on this cliff, like this guy's house is collapsing. He's like, I hate you, Poseidon. This guy was out fishing. He's like, hey, where'd the ocean go? Oh, there it is. It's a tsunami made of horses. And then there's a Minoan outpost of civilization. Blam! I think...
Well, we're taking your tech apparently, but you get to keep talking and you can move to your pad. Sorry about that.
And that's the end of Poseidon, guys.
The tech.
Here, wait, look.
Worried about you.
There we go. Look, there's a picture of him old mad. All right. The end. This has been the single most cursed presentation I've ever done. I will never again say Zeus is stupid.
Stay put.
Okay, I'll draw some pictures. I'm not a big astrology guy, but I know that as of today, we enter into Mercury Retrograde, which is when travel and technology fails, and I'd say that's pretty accurate. So. And we're going to lose the mic, right? Thanks, guys.